As we were discussing the din of that you need matzah roy l'shiva, and page Kuf Ayin Vav.
Kuf Ayin Vav?
In the new one. Which one you have the same?
Oh, Samaches. Oh.
Why Samaches?
No.
Oh, I don't have the same Minchas Chinuch. I'm sorry. I have a different sefer. I got that. I'm sorry.
No, I was looking ahead to Kuf Ayin Vav. That's the Malachas of Shabbos.
This is the Minchas Chinuch, but it has the Shuli HaMincha in the bottom. And I took a regular Minchas Chinuch, but I took the wrong volume. Okay. Uve'ikar din zeh, the matzah haroy l'shiva. The Gemara's case of matzah haroy l'shiva was, the Gemara discussed, it said in the Mishnah you can't be yotze, let's say, with chalos toda, which happened to be matzah. So the Gemara said, why not? So Rabbi said the reason was because it's not l'shma. If it was made l'shem chalos toda, it's not called l'shma. It has to be l'shem matzah. And Rabbi Yosef said because it's not matzah roy l'shiva, because chalos toda can only be eaten for a day and a night, so you need matzah, which is roy for the whole 7 days. And even though in the mitzvah now we're talking about he's not using it for chalos toda, so it is roy for the 7 days. But the chiddush of Rabbi Yosef was that even the shimur has to be for such a matzah, which is roy l'shima. And the medical scholar said it could be that Rabbi didn't say that pshat because he didn't hold that the shimur had to be for a matzah roy l'shiva. But could be agrees that to the fact that the matzah itself has to be roy l'shiva. That's what he said. Or it could be Rabbi Bachal doesn't hold the matzah roy l'shiva. Now he says, "V'ikar din zeh the matzah roy l'shiva the lo huva b'rishoni v'achroni." He says he's surprised the Rishonim and the Achronim don't bring it. L'chayt b'ferish Gemara. Nearer the Lafini cited the emetz lo tzarich kan ru'ya l'shiva. So this is a svara that we said. I didn't realize it was coming up in Chinuch. That could be by matzah. There's no inyan b'chlal. The Rishonim hold of roy l'shiva. Why not? The chila gadol, even though we saw by sukkah there was a machlokas tanoim and there was an inyan in matzah roy l'shiva l'kliyam, because the Mor over here said if you had a sukkah on a tree which you can't climb on Shabbos, there's one Tana said it's possible because it's not roy l'shiva, and the other one said, well, since it's only an Isra Rabbanim and Raisa, you could climb the tree, it is called roy l'shiva. But everybody seemed to agree by your sukkah you needed roy for all 7 days. And we tell the so matzah also you need roy 7 days. So now he's saying, he said maybe matzah is different. And we argue this also. The chila gadol yesh bein matzah l'sukkah is in the din of roy l'shiva. Why? The bishlam agabi sukkah, the mitzvah kol shiva. Where's a mitzvah to live in the sukkah the whole 7 days? Shach shaper lomer keeping the chada mitzvah, since it's one mitzvah of living in a sukkah for 7 days. Hikpida Torah she mitzvah zos lo tiyanechleka. So the Torah says you should have a sukkah that's fit for all things, not one sukkah for 1 day, a different sukkah for a different day. It's a svara that the sukkah should be roy for the whole mitzvah, which is the whole 7 days. Shasukkah shemakayim mitzvah tiyaruyil kol shiva l'kayim mitzvah. The sukkah which you're being mechanic say on the first day, that sukkah should be fit for all 7 days, because it's one long mitzvah of living in a sukkah for 7 days. Below shenasa sukkah shena yachol l'kayim mitzvah sukkah zu kol yimei achag v'nasa sukkah cheres aboreisiyam, not to make one sukkah for Sunday, another sukkah for Monday. Kamo like the case of sukkah siyal rosh ha'ilin, because that sukkah you can't use on Shabbos. Sham ilu having been a Torah, because there we said it, if the psul of having a sukkah on an ilan, if the din would be min Torah that you can't climb that tree, kuliyam would be moda. The only reason someone says one time, I've heard their names already, said it's okay, is because he said min Torah it is right to use that sukkah. You're allowed to climb the tree. So he says but since sukkah of Zion is one long mitzvah to live in a sukkah for 7 days, so it could be that's a svara that you need a sukkah to be able to be mekayim the whole mitzvah. Avol matzah, but when it comes to the mitzvah of matzah, the rak kazayas rishon mitzvah, where the mitzvah of matzah is only the first kazayas, v'chol shiva hi rishus gomer, and the rest of the days of matzah of Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah, just you can't eat chametz. But if you want to eat bread or something, you can't eat chametz. Then you have to eat matzah. But the matzah, it's a rishus. There's no chiyuv to eat matzah whatsoever. Uma in rishus the mitzvah. He says that rishus to eat matzah has nothing to do with the mitzvah of matzah, which is only the first night. So b'shvil ha-mitzvah tira Torah. So the Torah permitted matzah for the mitzvah. B'shvil rishus lo tira Torah lechol daber eser. In other words, he was going on the case of Esidoch Chodesh, right? That the problem was it's not roy the Shiva. So he says, who says it has to be roy the Shiva? As long as it's fit for the mitzvah, it's good enough. And the rest of the days, it's not a mitzvah either. So why should it have to be roy for that? The mitzvah roy Shiva. There's no svara that you should have to be royal shiva. The royal shiva, why should the matzah have to be royal shiva? There's no more mitzvah matzah the rest of the shiva. The Yeshiva Hatim, he says, I can't explain it anywhere. A lot of times he goes over it because he thinks he's explaining it better. He says, I can't make it more ta'imidik. I can't explain it more kishmak. He says, it's understand the way I'm saying, I am v'tovin. Look it over and you'll understand. So in other words, he's saying that the whole concept of being royal shiva is easy to understand by sukkah because there's a mitzvah called shiva. But if the whole mitzvah of matzah is only the first 9 TTEC of matzah, what's the svara that the matzah has to be fit for all shiva? There is no mitzvah of matzah the whole 7 days. It's only a rishus.
So he's going back on his viewpoint previously.
Right. Then you need matzah royal kol shiva. But
so even according to Rabbi, who is it according to?
Yeah, well, that's what he's going to say. V'ayin ran. Now this I'm not so sure what he means. V'ayin ran sukkah. He says the ran in sukkah. He says gimel and aleph midapa yirif. In other words, not gimel and sukkah, but the 3rd page of the rif over there in sukkah. Gabe migu da'avi dofel in the sukkah kasav in yinzeh. The Gemara over there speaks about the rules of what kind of mechitza you need. There's halachas of mechitza that you need to be a dopen for a sukkah, and there's halachas of mechitza that you need to be, let's say, you need mechitzas to make rishus hayachid. Right. So the Gemara over there says, in some cases, the rules of sukkah are different than the rules of Shabbos. But if you have a sukkah on Shabbos and it's kosher mechitza for a sukkah, so we say migu that is kosher for sukkah, it'll be then kosher for Shabbos also, which is hard to understand, but that's what the Gemara says. Bayan Rashi, he says, look up the Ran on that sukkah, migu davidovon sukkah, kasav kains, he says the same type of svara. Lo shayach l'meimer da Torah nasna shir lahachshir sukkah u'v'Shabbos teitzrich lahachshir yoser, because it's not mistaver. He said, what are you going to say on this Shabbos? Well, this is a good enough mechitza as far as sukkah, but it's not good enough for Shabbos, and therefore you won't be able to use it on Shabbos. He says, because that's going to come out that this sukkah you could use the whole week and you won't be able to use this on Shabbos, and he says that's not a staver.
You're talking about Rishus Hayachid D'Oraisa, like you're talking about the...
There's talking about a Lechitza Rishus Hayachid D'Oraisa. But Hachinami, he says, Gabi Sukkah, Hein Hein Advarim, says the same type of svara. That it's not mistaver that a Torah will say, use this sukkah today, and the next days it's not good. It's more mistaver, you have to have a sukkah that's right for every day. What's the difference that if you have to eat matzah like other food? Right? So why should it have to be roy for that? He says if the din would be by matzah, there is a mitzvah to eat a kol shiva, then he understands shayach shaper din zeh. He can understand. Then you could tell me you need a matzah, you need a type of matzah which is good for the whole mitzvah matzah, all 7 days. But that's if it's a mitzvah the whole 7 days. The l'shayach lomar, because it's not shayach to say keep in the mitzvah achasi yiyotzim bo imena ruya lot says calls mana mitzvah, because if there would be a mitzvah matzah lach kol shiva, I understand it's not shayach to say that today you could be yotzei with it, tomorrow you can't be yotzei with it. It's not mistar, but the Torah made these kind of chilukim of the TTEC hachshir yoser bezim meachak to say that it's kosher for today and it's not kosher for tomorrow. You need a bigger type of matzah for the mitzvah matzah that day. That's not mistar. And therefore it's arach matzah royal shiva. Then there would be a svara if it would be one long mitzvah the whole 7 days. I would understand you need matzah royal shiva. But he says b'chlal it's not a svara that by matzah you need royal shiva. And he says that's why the Rishonim and Achronim don't do it. So how are you going to learn Rav and Rav Yosef? So let's see. There the more discusses. Everybody agrees you can't eat chametz on Pesach because it's Yechai of Karas. The Gemara has a machlokas about Lifnei Pesach, in other words, on Erev Pesach and after Pesach. So the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda holds there's a lo sasa to eat chametz after chatzos Erev Pesach, and there's also a lo sa to eat chametz after Pesach. Rabbi Shimon holds in both cases there's no lo sasa. We have paskin halacha that Erev Pesach after chatzos there is a lo sasa, like Rabbi Yehuda. But there is no losa, so that's only a knas abundance. We make one way we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, Lifnei Pesach, and afterwards we don't. So in that sugi he says, Rav Shimon, Rabbi Shimon says that he proves that there is no Esher Lomer Kain. He says, how could you possibly say, Rabbi Yehuda, there's a losa? Let's say he's talking about after Pesach. How could you say there's a losa? I said, and that pasuk says, don't eat chametz for 7 days, right? And it says you should eat matzah. And he says, Ella calls man sheyeshna b'kum echol matzah. How be about tochel chametz? He says the whole law of eating chametz is only when there's a mitzvah to eat matzah. So he said to Rabbi Yehuda, how could you say there's a law on chametz, of chametz after Pesach? He says there's no mitzvah of eating matzah after Pesach, so there's no law of chametz either. Okay, so the language of the Gemara is, he says, there's only a lav of chametz when there's a kum echol matzah. So what do you mean there's a kum echol matzah? The whole Pesach there's no kum echol matzah. There's only a kum echol matzah the first night. So the Pnei Yeshua had a problem with that language. So he says, Ayin Shem Pnei Yeshua Di Remaskil B'Shoah Shekasav. He says from that language you see the Reb Shimon Sfirale to Chol Shiva Mitzvah Lechol Matzah. We don't pasuk like him. But he says, you see from that language of Reb Shimon that he says there's only a losas, and when there's a kum echol matzah, he certainly agrees there's a losas to chametz the whole Pesach. He's just arguing there's no losas after Pesach or before Pesach. But he certainly agrees there's a losas the whole Pesach, and he says there's only a losa when there's a kum echol matzah. So Bnei Yeshua is medayik on that lashon that he must hold there's a mitzvah, there's a kum echol matzah, a mitzvah of kum echol, because the language kum echol matzah implies like there's get up and eat it. It's masha there's a mitzvah to eat matzah.
Would this support the Gra's position?
He's saying without the Gra. He's saying that he holds this kum echol.
No, but I'm saying Rosh Shimon, he's saying there's a mitzvah. What I'm saying, what I'm wondering about is that Rosh Shimon is arguing this way against Rabbi Yehuda. So he's saying he's like if Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold this kum, there's no essay, then my argument can't convince you, since we're really arguing whether there's a mitzvah. But according to the Gra, who holds that Rabbi Yehuda holds that there's a kiyum essay, even though a chiyuv, could you say that Rosh Shimon is saying even according to you, that there's a kiyum essay, but you're saying from kum it seems to be much more of a.
He's being done when they're sure that they should. I'll just tell you one thing. My did not well a comment chafam banal me rimi de Croy says I the Gemara says clearly the Pnei Yeshua says he just got finished saying Reb Shimon holds there's a mitzvah to eat called Shiva. I the Gemara later on he says has a steering psukim to see because one pasuk says Shivas Yamim Tochal Matzos and another pasuk says Sheishas Yamim Tochal Matzos. So the Gemara says called Davar Shiva. The Gemara says just like you're forced to say that when even though it says Shivas Yamim, it doesn't mean the whole 7 days because the other pasuk says 6 days. So he says the call Shivas Hayamim is Rishus. So we learn out that just like one of those 7 days is Rishus, the whole 7 days is Rishus. So how can Pnei Yeshua say, how could I say that the Reb Shimon holds is a mitzvah the whole 7 days? He says Reb Shimon he doesn't hold to that Remi Dekra. He has different drushes to make from those psukim, and I guess he says what drushes he makes. Okay. So therefore he's saying now that according to Reb Shimon there is a mitzvah called Shiva. So he says now Gamkin Efsher Nami the Reb Yosef the Sfirle Svarzo. He says maybe Reb Yosef who says by an arsuga that the Chalos told her you can't be Yosef with it because it's not Roy L'Shiva, and he had a problem. Why should it have to be Roy L'Shiva? There's no mitzvah called Shiva. He says maybe Reb Yosef holds like Reb Shimon. According to Bnei Yeshua, the Tana Reb Shimon holds that way. He said the Reb Yosef could be Sfirle Svarzo to be a matzah really Shiva. So Ergam came to mitzvah matzah called Shiva. In Kain Shach Shapra Alima the Shivas Yamim the Sarah Shatei Rula Shiva. He says according to Reb Shimon, if you hold like the way the Pnei Yeshua, a lot of people argue with the Pnei Yeshua, they don't attack the lesson that way. But they say if you hold like the Pnei Yeshua, Reb Shimon holds you need all Shiva. It could be Reb Yosef holds that one. It could be that's why Reb Yosef is saying you need matzah royal Shiva behind the Meshach HaMitzvah because the whole mitzvah is 7 days. Shlo Yecholik. They can't say one day the mitzvah is this way and one day the mitzvah is the other way. Yistarach matzah acheres the mitzvah shel shorina. Because then if you would say you don't need matzah royal Shiva, it would come out different days. There's different rules in the mitzvah. How will he done? But he says could be the done. The sphere on rak lala rishona chova va'akrachu rishus gomor ain't shak cloud davar zeh. Could be there's no concept at all of matzah roy lechol shiva. So now he's going because the sphere was good. Now, but you had a problem with Rav Yosef. So he gets out of it by saying that maybe Reb Yosef holds like Reb Shimon, the way that Pnei Yeshua learns Reb Shimon, that there's a din of matzah roy l'chol shiva, because he holds there's a whole mitzvah, the mitzvah 7 days. Okay, and therefore b'makam the docha esel l'osaseh, like in the case of matzah shal chadash, where we would say esel do kosher kasher shagasari, shaper dem it's fine. Lo shach ain't a roy l'shiva, because we don't hold like Reb Shimon. We hold there is no matzah, it's just a whole Pesach, and therefore you don't need matzah roy l'chol shiva. So that's why the Shama asked, let the Eseh matzah be docha chadash, and the kasha was, well, that's only in one kazayat, but then you're not going to be, it's still going to be chadash later on, and you're not going to have an Eseh, so it's not roy l'chol shiva. So he's saying we don't hold roy l'chol shiva, and it's not mistaver. You should need roy l'chol shiva. We find Reb Yosef, so that could be Reb Yosef holds like Reb Shimon, and the Pnei Yeshua's machadash according to Reb Shimon, you need roy l'chol shiva. So some people in the portion of the bottom over here say that could be, and there was his svara is very strong. If matzah is nothing special about matzah, the whole Pesach, why should he have to have matzah roy l'chol shiva? So he's getting out of it according to Reb Shimon. There is a mitzvah kol shiva, but some people on the bottom of the portion over here say that could be it's bavus, that the gross shita is that the whole 7 days, when the Gemara says it's a reshus, it just means there's no chiyuv. But every time you eat matzah, most people say, because I some matzah, a whole Pesach, there is a mitzvah. So they say to get away from the Minchas Chinuch's problem, they say could be that's why there's a concept of matzah roy l'chol shiva, because even though there's no chiyuv, there is a kiyum mitzvah. So I saw today something that I wasn't omen that the fortuning down that there's a lot of people that say like the Vilna Gaon that there's a kiyum, a lot of Rishonim, not most of them don't, but there are a number of Rishonim that say there's a kiyum mitzvah the whole Pesach. So I saw a sefer that said, there's a beer halacha in the Mishnah Berurah that has a shayla like this. He says, according to the Gaon, every time you eat matzah a whole 7 days, you're mekayim a mitzvah. So he says, what about when it comes to sukkah? Now, a sukkah you don't have to have pas. You could eat fruit the whole sukkah, so you're not mechuyev to eat in the sukkah. You have to sleep in the sukkah. You can't go without sleeping. But as far as eating, you don't have to eat in a sukkah. So he's mesupik. He says, according to the Vilna Gaon, do you have, even though you don't have to eat pas, but you have a kiyum mitzvah, just like the whole matzah, whole Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah, but when you do eat matzah, you get a kiyum mitzvah. So the Be'er Halacha says he's mesupik, if according to the Vilna Gaon, when the same thing applies by sukkah, that you don't have to eat pas, right? You could eat peros, but if you do eat pas, you should get, do you get a kiyum mitzvah? And of course, you have a problem. What is he talking about? It's true you don't have to eat pas, but everybody agrees that when you eat, you're being kind of mitzvahs, besukas, teishu, shivas. What? You make a bracha, right? So what's the beer halachas shaila? Right. And they also, the Sefer Leisa said, also ask, why is he declaring according to the Gra? He says a lot of the Meforshim hold there's a kiyum mitzvah. So why does he bring down? According to the Gra, is there a kiyum mitzvah by sukkah? He says, what's his shaila? So the Sefer brought down that they asked this question to the stipler. This Sefer was Machabim, but then he said he heard that they asked the stipler this question. I don't know what and the stiplers told him like this. He says there's 3 madregas. He says there's a mitzvah which is a chiyuv. Let's say the first night of Pesach, you're mechuyev to eat matzah. There's a mitzvah that if you not have no chiyuv whatsoever, but if you do it, you get a kiyum mitzvah. That's a regular concept of a kiyum mitzvah. You weren't obligated, but if you do it, you get a kiyum mitzvah. And then he says there's an in-between madrega. There's a madrega where there is no chiyuv, but it's a mitzvah to see that you do it. In other words, let's say when he says, the other Rishonim just say that if a person eats matzah on Pesach, you get a kiyum mitzvah of eating matzah. He says the Groa says one step further than that. He says there's a mitzvah l'chatzchila to eat matzah on Pesach. It's not only if you eat it, you'll get a kiyum mitzvah. The Groa says it's not a chov. it's not a chod, you're not mechuyev to, but there is a mitzvah to see that you eat matzah on Pesach.
Like a mitzvah chatchila?
No, like it's a mitzvah l'chatchila. The Torah gives you a mitzvah l'chatchila to do this. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa l'chatchila to see that you eat matzah. He said he fits that into the lashon of the Gra. Something that you're not obligated to do. It's not a chiyuv that you have to no matter what. But you're supposed to try. It could be shas chaks and other things where if it would be chiyuv you would have to. But here it's not a chiyuv. But you should be mishtadel, according to the Torah, you should be mishtadel to eat matzah. I'm not saying that's what he passes, but he's saying that's what the Gra holds, different than all these other Rishonim who hold to kiyum mitzvah. They only say, if you do it, you get a mitzvah. But the Gra is making a middle madrega, that here there's a mitzvah l'chatchila to do. And that's and he says, that was the Bir Halacha's suffix. Since the Gra, and it fits into the Bir Halacha's lashon also, since the Gra held by matzah, there's a mitzvah to see that you do it. Not a chiyuv, but a mitzvah. He was clearing by sukkah, you don't have to eat pas. So you can eat pears, you don't have to eat sukkah. If you do eat pas, you're certainly going to get a mitzvah of eating in the sukkah. But there's an inyan to try to eat pas. You know, is there an inyan deraisa is there a mitzvah l'chatchila to eat pas in the sukkah? That's what this sefer wanted to say. And he said it on his own. This is a sefer that's on, I just saw it today in Psachim, put out by, he has a very nice halachik Torah from Rabbi Ocean. He's the Rosh Yeshiva, one of the Rosh Yeshivas of BMG of Beis Medrash Gavoa. But at the end he says he heard that this question, how to learn the Bir Halacha, was told to the Stipler, and this was the Stipler answer. It was a chiddush of the Gra, and that's how the Bir Halacha understood the Gra, which is a different way of normally understanding the Gra. So it's not stam azay that on Pesach, if you do it, you get a kiyum mitzvah, but the Gra holds it's a mitzvah to do it, not a chiyuv to do it. And I guess there's different levels of how far you have to go. If it's a chiyuv, you have to go all the way to make sure you do it, unless you're really an honest. If it's not a chiyuv, it's just a mitzvah. So I guess there's, not such strong chiyuv. It's not there's. But stam azay, you have a choice. You have a mitzvah to do it. So mitzvah is to try to get the kiyum mitzvah.
It's what's him. I mean, I think I've go through. I have to go through all the figures we're but it seems that there's some connection between the shiva of sukkah and the shiva of matzah. So if you sort of make them, you sort of connect them, and you sort of. But this way, there's no connection either way. I mean, it seems to say that the same way there's a mitzvah in the sukkah all 7 days, so maybe there's a mitzvah of matzah all 7 days. But this way, it seems to be that the Gra's 7 days has nothing to do with sukkah. It's like because if you could ask the question back,
right? The question is, and that's what Mr. was saying. Do we learn out sukkah from matzah? He's not asking. He's saying that once we see by matzahs that way, should we say there's the same thing by sukkahs?
And this way, so it seems it really makes it two things. That if you say that Ra worked it out from himself, he's asking. But we know. So it seems to be.
Should we now learn out sukkah from matzah?
But we know sukkah has another mitzvah. It's really separating the two. It's just the way the discussion seems to imply that there's some connection between the two, but this really totally separates it, because we're saying that the definition of this mitzvah is inherently different than the definition of this mitzvah. So,
you see, even in the Minchas Chinuch we learned last week say clearly that if sukkah is then a mitzvah, sukkah is royal shiva, it should be the matzah has to be royal shiva. But here he goes and says it's a big chilek because matzah is only mitzvah the first night. But these other achronim are saying not like the Minchas Chinuch. They're saying if you hold like the Gra, there is a concept of royal shiva because there's a kiyum mitzvah called shiva. Right. But there's different. But today I came across this thing. There's different ways of learning what it means when you say there's a kiyum mitzvah. It's totally separate way. There's a mitzvah to do this kiyum mitzvah. I mean, most Rishonim hold it's rishus completely. There's no kiyum mitzvah at all by matzah. But
by sukkah.
By sukkah, certainly. If you're going to eat in a sukkah, you're certainly
the same thing. It's not like a rishus. If you eat bread.
Yeah, if you eat bread, you'll get a mitzvah of eating in the sukkah. But then, if you decide to eat bread, then you actually mechuyev to eat the bread in the sukkah. But still, it doesn't say any place that There's a mitzvah to eat bread. Right.
The Gra
It says you can eat
when you
parrot.
sleep in the sukkah. You make a leish.
Now, it's a big machlokas Rishonim, but we only make a bracha on achila, and we say that achila has a mind to go through all the. But there are people that there are Rishonim that say you make a bracha on sleeping, and there are people even nowadays that make a bracha on sleeping. But our meaning is just only make a bracha like Rabbi Tam on achila.
Is there anybody who says that there's always a chiyuv to that chiyuv of eating in the sukkah is always there? It's always there consistently. It's just that if you don't eat bread, you have a patur. You don't have to be in the sukkah if you're eating fruit, for example.
I think that's the way most people understand. There's a chiyuv of sukkah teish yeshivas. There's a chiyuv, and eating bread is part of the teishu. So there is just that you don't have to eat bread, but the chiyuv of teishu, because there's no specific mitzvah of eating it except the first thing. So it's just a teishu shivas yamim, and that mitzvah is always there, but it's only considered teishu if by a meal. A meal means pas, or anything, something shal, anything you're really koveya suda, but let's say pas for sure. So I think that's the way most people understand.
But that also makes like according to the Gra, is there any mitzvah, any birchas and mitzvah? If you like when we say the birchas leishei b'sukkah during Chol Moed, it's you really are fulfilling the deraisa, and in other words, it's not just the fact that you're eating; is that it's an indication that you're. It's almost like a chiyuv. It's really, since I have to dwell in the sukkah and I have an obligation of dwelling in the sukkah, so I'm doing an act of dwelling, and since I'm doing an act of dwelling, it's a chiyuv that I have to do it here. So that makes that would be different than the Gra's understanding.
Right. Yeah.
So the Gra doesn't have a birchas and mitzvah either.
On my matzah.
On matzah.
Right.
Why
not? That this saber ended up he doesn't understand according to the way he understands the Gra. Why shouldn't there be a mitzvah?
Right.
Why shouldn't there be a bracha?
Right. That's what I'm trying to understand. But the fact is that from this discussion, it seems like leishei b'sukkah is not just a kiyum mitzvah. It's really a fulfillment of a chiyuv, because what you're doing is an act of leishev, and that act of leishev you have to do in the sukkah. You know?
That is the Pashto way of learning. I think that's the way everyone learns. The problem is that there's I don't know if it's in Psachim or in Sukkah, I think it's in Psachim, that there's a Bala Mor that asks the question. He says, how come when it comes to Sukkahs, the whole 7 days we make a bracha leishev with sukkah, and how come by matzah we don't do such a thing? We only make a bracha by the first kazayas of matzah. Why should matzah be any different than sukkah? So it's hard to understand his question, and his answer is, he says, because the reason there's a bracha of leishei b'sukkah is because he says you can't say the mitzvah of sukkah is only the first day, because part of leishei b'sukkah is to sleep. And you can't go without sleeping more than 3 days. So you're going to have to. So sleeping is going to be required over sukkahs. So therefore, there's a mitzvah. There's a bracha by the whole 7 days, right? But by matzah, you can go without. You can go without matzah the whole thing. So there is no bracha the whole 7 days. So you have to fit in what you're saying into according to the Bible. Why didn't he just say pashut by sukkah? Whenever you make a bracha when you eat, and whenever you eat, you're being mekayim the chiyuv deraisa of leishev, because you are doing leishev with sukkah, right? And why didn't he say that? Which is the pashut answer, but he doesn't answer that. He says that 7 days, because you can't go. You could go without eating pas for 7 days, but you can't go without sleeping for 7 days. So you're going to have to be in the sukkah. So that's why there's a bracha. So it's I understand. They do bring a right for the Baal more that he must b'chlal. How could that he must hold there's a kiyum mitzvah or else b'chlal? What was his whole kasha? But still, from his answer, it's not much like what you're saying either. Although the pashas of what you're saying.
Right. No, I'm just trying.
Okay.
But that's why I think the way he understood the Gra, the way he understood the Gra, leads me to start thinking that it makes the absence of a bracha in the Gra a little bit more difficult. Yeah.
I think that's safer also. Yeah. That's Rabbi Yoshin safer. Now he says, okay.
Put down a matzah. I find it so difficult to understand how by eating matzah on Pesach you're not being mekayim a mitzvah. I find it. What are you going to say? So you only make certain matzahs l'shem mitzvahs matzah. The other ones. You're not going to have to
the other one is only as long as it's just an onion, not any chametz. It's just as long as it's not chametz.
Make sure they're kosher and don't not l'shem mitzvahs matzah.
Yeah.
That make a separate batch.
There is a shaila, even according to the Gra, that the Gra says there's a mitzvah kiyumis, a whole Pesach, right? Is that mitzvah kiyumis only when it's shmur matzah?
Right.
Or does he hold? In other words, shmur matzah, everybody agrees the mitzvah, the chi of matzah of the Seder has to be shmur matzah. Now, according to the Gra that makes us chiddush that there's a mitzvah the whole Pesach to eat matzah, is that only shmur matzah, or is that every matzah? As long as it's not chametz, there's a kiyum mitzvah, and that's not so clear what the Gra holds. I've seen people say different things. I don't remember the rayas or not. But there are people. I mean, a lot of people are makbid. I never was, but now I am. Not because my wife comes from a family that ate shmur matzah the whole Pesach. I ended up eating shmur matzah the whole Pesach because that was what she was used to, and she was brought up. But a lot of people don't eat shmur matzah the whole. It's a big expense, but a lot of people don't eat shmur matzah the whole Pesach. And but there are people that could they hold the kiyum mitzvahs only with shmur matzah? I don't know. But I know there's a shaila according to the Gra what kind of matzah do you need. We saw that we mentioned it, we never worked on it, but the Rama mentioned that the whole din of shmur, in other words, the shmur l'shmur, he never mentioned Leil Pesach. Whenever he spoke about shmur l'shmur, he said Pesach. And when he talked about matzah of Pesach, he said you need shmur l'shem the matzah. He never said for the shame the mitzvahs matzah leil seder, and I think the Minchas Chinuch mentioned or someone mentioned that you see that he held the whole inyan of shmir, but he doesn't hold there's a key mitzvah the whole Pashut he doesn't hold there's a key mitzvah the whole Pesach either, and yet he mentioned shmir l'shem matzah. It's mashal from there that the whole idea of shmir was there a machmir and shmir that it shouldn't be chametz.
I think Gershon's point is so well taken. I mean, the idea that Chag HaMatzot is like not. It's like very strange to say there's no eating matzah on Pesach.
Yeah, eat a banana.
Yeah.
Eat it because I is a night, right? Right. Yeah, yes, you're right. But anyway, we come out with a big chiddush. There is a Pnei Yeshua that says, according to Reb Shimon, right, which we don't paskin like, but Reb Shimon he holds that there's a mitzvah, there's a kumach or matzah all 7 days of Pesach.
The Hasidim, I don't mean to be funny, but the Hasidim would seem to disagree. There's like a holiness, a godliness to matzah.
Yeah.
There's like a special thing to it. So to say to a certain individual, I was thinking Lubavitch or anything, that when you eat matzah on Pesach, you're not mekayim a mitzvah. Is that true? Would that fly in the face of that philosophy that it's a highly good thing? It's like
I think it does. The whole Pesach, the Rishonim say clearly it's a rishus. I mean, most Rishonim. We're not talking about the Gra.
We're talking halachically, it's a rishus. Halachically, it's a rishus. But it could be a holy, wonderful thing.
This is Rabbi Shimon, so therefore it's Al Pi Zohar, it's Al Kabbalah. I mean, like maybe they.
Maybe it's two different discussions. One's a halachic discussion, and the other one is you're getting into Kabbalah.
That's. But according to what you said, Rabbi Shimon, you say it's well, yeah. Is he actually saying there's a chiyuv to have?
Yeah.
Every day you should have a kazayis hamasa. But anytime in the 24 hours, like he's.
I don't know. You have to see the Pnei Yeshua inside. I would assume it means once a day.
Once a day. So.
Okay. I would assume, but I have to see the Pnei Yeshua inside. I didn't know the Pnei Yeshua until I saw the, today. So I looked at the Minchas Chinuch. Okay. Now, So now he says, V'hinei, that's we're up to, right? V'hinei? Hard the yotzi with tevel? There's a mission that says you cannot be yotzi with matzah of tevel. And the question is, what's wrong? Why can't you yotzi with matzah of tevel? So, Muki Sham Igmar Daf Lamehem Beis HaBraisa. The Gemara brings a brisa that says you can't be yotzi with tevel. And the Gemara says the brisa that says you can't be yotzi with tevel is Reb Shimon. It's going like Reb Shimon, a different Reb Shimon, not Reb Shimon before. Ein iser chal iser afilu b'kolo. The Gemara says clearly that everybody holds that you can only be yotzi matzah with something which, if it was allowed to go on and you weren't quick to make a matzah, would have become chametz. And therefore, things that are not from the 5 grains, they can't become matzah, things like rice and stuff like that, because they can't become chametz. Whatever can't become chametz, there is no mitzvah matzah. The whole idea of matzah is you baked it into matzah before it could become chametz. So now the question is, if you have tevel, but you're not allowed to eat tevel until you give the trumas and maasros, and let's say tevel would have become chametz, and if you eat it on Pesach, would you be over chametz or not? So the Gemara says there's a principle of ein iser chal al iser. So according to Reb Shimon, so there's another question. When we say ein iser chal al iser, so that means that both isurim are the same level. So the second iser, if there's already a level 1 iser on it, so if it's the same level of chametz, so then chametz can't be chal on it. But if a person has tevel, so we paskin that chametz can be chal on tevel, like the chachamim. Why? Because the isser chametz applies to all tuah, which is not even tevel, which is regular tuah. There's an isser chametz, and this tevel only applies to something which is in the category of tevel. They didn't give trumas and maasros, and chametz applies to everything, even if it's not tevel. So that's called kolo. The isser of chametz is much stronger isser because it applies to truma and maasros and everything like that, and tevel only applies to something which trumas and maasros weren't given. So that's called kolo. And we paskin when the second isser is kolo more than the first, it's more inclusive, then the second isser is chal. So we paskin chametz can be chal on tevel.
The effect is a paid chorus.
No, that doesn't make a difference. And
what's the penalty for tevel is?
Nisbet Ishmael. Most
It's just different.
chorus is more chomer. That's not enough to make it chal. So then the Gemara says that Reb Shimon doesn't hold of the principle of kolo. The Gemara's example where we find Reb Shimon, let's say a person eats nevela on Yom Kippur. Would it be over? It was nevela before Yom Kippur, and he ate the nevela on Yom Kippur. So would it be over? Would he be chayav for Yom Kippur? So the Gemara says, according to Chachamim, when Yom Kippur is kolo, it includes all food. Right, nevela only goes, the lav of nevela goes only in food which happens to be nevela. But Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to eat anything. So the isser of Yom Kippur is chal on nevela. But Reb Shimon says no, it's not chal on nevela, because the more proofs from there that Reb Shimon doesn't hold of this concept of kolo. So just like Yom Kippur can't be chal on nevela according to Reb Shimon, so chametz can't be chal on tevel. So the Gemara says, and you could only be yotzi matzah on something which could have the yisr of chametz. And since, according to Reb Shimon, chametz can't be chal on tevel, you can't be yotzi matzah with tevel. That's what the Gemara explains. With the brisa, there's a brisa. The Gemara brings a brisa that says you can't be yotzi with tevel. So the Gemara says it's going like Reb Shimon, that ain't isser chal isser afilu b'kolo, that an isser can't be chal on the previous isser, even if the second one is kolo, and therefore chametz can't be chal on tevel. So therefore tevel is not roy to become chametz, and something which is not roy to become chametz, there's no mitzvah of matzah. Okay, that's the brisa. Now in the Mishnah just said you're not yotzei with matzah shel tevel. The Mishnah doesn't give a reason at all. So you could learn the Mishnah. It's a stam Mishnah. And the Rishonim say, what's the reason of the Mishnah? Now, if the reason of the Mishnah is the same reason of the Brisa because of like Reb Shimon, then you're going to have to say the stam Mishnah is like Reb Shimon. And it's difficult to do that because we don't paskin like Reb Shimon. And we always don't want to learn Stam Mishnahs, and it's possible that it's like Rav Shimon, and some Rishonim say it is like Rav Shimon, but a lot of Rishonim don't appreciate that because it's difficult to say a Bryce is like Rav Shimon, okay, but to say a Stam Mishnah is going like Rav Shimon is not acceptable because we don't paskin like Rav Shimon. So the Rishonim say when the Mishnah doesn't say the reason, so it could be the Mishnah had a different reason. So the Ran and other Rishonim say it's simple. The Mishnah's reason is it's because the mitzvah b'avi avera. It's an avera tevel, and you can't eat matzah shel tevel because it's a mitzvah b'avera. So then the problem is, so why didn't the Brisa say that reason? Why did the Brisa have to come on to Reb Shimon because of Bisser Kol? So they say because a lot of Rishonim hold the whole problem of mitzvah b'avera is only with Rabbanan. In the Torah, there's a Tosus, there's a lot of Rishonim that say the mitzvah b'avera is only absul d'Rabbanan. So the Mishnah says you can't do it. It could be a meaning Rabbanan you can't do it. That's mitzvah b'avera. But the Brisa is saying that according to Reb Shimon, you can't even be yotzei midaraisa because since chametz can't be chal on tevel, and kol wherever can't have the Yisra chametz doesn't have the mitzvah of matzah, so you're not going to be able to be yotzei matzah shel tevel midaraisa. So the question is, in the Mishnah that says it's mitzvah b'avera, why don't you say yesei docha losa? So there's around, I have notes over here above them, but there's around 10 different reasons the Meforshim say. But the most simple reason is that the Shagasari says just like an essay can only be docha plain losasa.
Right.
But a losa sheish b'karas the Gemara says it can't be docha. So he says tevel is also a losa sheish b'mitzvah shamayim. It's not a plain losasa. And therefore, an essay cannot be docha tevel. So therefore, you can't say the essay is docha losa. So if you're going to eat matzah shel tevel, it's going to be a mitzvah b'avera. That's the Shagas Aryeh's way, which is simple, but not so simple. I mean, the yisod that you can't be docha losa shishmayim makes a lot of sense because the whole source is from Klein Besitzes, which is the regular losasa. Right. Just like the Gemara in Yevamah says, but a more chomer dergalosa like chorus, and essay can't be docha losa right. Chorus. So he's just saying tevel is a losa sheish po mitzvah shamayim. But the problem is, and I'm not capable of going through this now, but there's different types of different levels of tevel. For example, if you have tevel and nothing was given, none of the trumas and ma'asos were given, it's certainly mitzvah shamayim. But you could have something which is tevel, let's say that truma was given, but every year besides truma you have to give ma'asos, ma'aser rishon, ma'aser sheni. Each year there's 2 ma'asos you have to give. Now what if something was tevel? So if you didn't give any of the trumas and ma'asos that you were supposed to give, it's tevel. The question is, does mitzvah shamayim to apply to all those levels of tevel? So if you didn't give trumas, for sure there's mitzvah shamayim. And I think if you didn't give ma'aser rishon, also there's mitzvah shamayim. But I think there's a shaila if you didn't give ma'aser ani, is there mitzvah shamayim? Right. So to say that Shagasari's shot that you can't be yotzi u'matzah shel tevel because the essay is on docha losa because it's a losa sheish bo mitzvah shamayim, that would be very good if all tevel has mitzvah shamayim. But if you find out that some Rishonim or some Gemaras are mashma that not all tevel is mitzvah shamayim. For example, if you gave truma and ma'aser rishon but you didn't give ma'aser ani yet, there isn't mitzvah shamayim. So then you should, according to you should say yesei docha losa, and the Mishnah says stam matzah shel tevel. It doesn't make a difference what kind of tevel. So I think the Shagasai Taka holds that all tevel has mitzvah shamayim, but that you have to go and be mavar that not everybody agrees. I mean, everybody agrees that if you didn't give truma, it's mitzvah shamayim. And I think I'm not sure even ma'aser rishon, but I think there's a machlokas if you gave truma and ma'aser rishon, but you didn't give ma'aser ani, if there's mitzvah shamayim. So his teretz that you can't eat matzah shel tevel, you don't say yesei docha losa because it's mitzvah shamayim is not so pasha because not all tevel is mitzvah shamayim. But that's his approach. But there are other approaches why you don't say yesei docha losa said by ma'aser shel tevel. Some people, I have my notes here, I don't remember, I looked at them this morning, but I remember some people say that because to make it always tevel, if it happens to be tevel from truma, all you have to give is just for truma you don't have to have a share. You just like kol shu, your yosei truma. So it could be the matzah shel tevel is not the yesei docha losa because if it's tevel because of truma, then all you have to do give us a mashal. It's like after the Kayim Shem, you don't say essay. So thus it won't help the other meisters. So it matters what tevel you're talking about.
Well, it won't
right?
help the other meisters.
You have to give meister. You can't give a kosher. So,
but you'd have to measure it. But
so you have to say the Mishnah is talking about that you're able to give the meister, and you can't eat the meister. Well, anyway, you have to work it out. But there are different roots. But for some reason you don't say essay docha losa. But there's other reasons too that Rishonim say. I just have a whole. I was just before you came. I had in my notes to look up Rabbeinu David. He has a whole. Maybe we could do it next week. But he's a whole concept of Esed of Losa and Mitzvah of Yever. It's unbelievable. This Rabbeinu David was like a Talmud of the Ramban or a Talmud of Talmidim of the Ramban. There's a lot of big chidushim in there. But so maybe we could do that next week. But you don't say Esed of Losa. But you could learn the Mishnah. For whatever reason is, you don't say Esed of Losa. And so then it's if you eat Matzah Shetavol, the Mishnah says you're not Yotzi because the Mitzvah Ba'aver. So then the question is, so why did they have to say according to Rav Shimon you're not Yotze because Chametz isn't Chal on it? So they say Mitzvah Ba'aver is only a reason to Rabbanan you're not Yotze because they hold that whole concept of Mitzvah Ba'aver is a Rabbanan, and Rav Shimon's reason it would be Midrash you're not Yotze.
You say Mitzvah Ba'aver is a Rabbanan. That means
that's some Rishonim, right?
But
the Rabbanan said you're not Yotze, and they were usually do it again.
You're not Yotze, but you still. But the right say you're Yotze, but you still get the Avera. Like
well, it matters what the Rabbanan did. Whenever they say you're not Yotze, that's the whole shiloh. What did the Rabbanan mafki the mitzvah? They just said we want you to do it again, or that's the whole shiloh.
But without the Rabbanan saying mitzvah b'avera, what would you say if, like in this case over here? I'm like, if you don't say Esed,
you would get the Avera and you would be Mekayim the mitzvah. You wouldn't have to do it again.
Right, but you'd still get the Avera.
Yeah.
But so the point is that a person shouldn't do.
Yeah, you shouldn't do it because but still, if you do it, you're going to get the mitzvah. And the Avera.
So the fact that it's still mitzvah b'avi Avera means it's still something you shouldn't do.
Right.
I mean the point.
There's no special than the right. So there's an Avera, so there's no heter to do the Avera for the mitzvah.
Right. So once you're told this idea that you shouldn't eat them, you shouldn't. So the statement of this, it has to be that you're saying that it says
you're not Yotze. It says Matzah Shetavol, you're not Yotze.
So you're saying Yotze b'tevel. So because it says language of Yotze, so it's Rabbanan says you're not Yotze.
I don't know if that's the language. That's the Pasha way of learning the Mishnah. That's what you have to see. Rabbeinu David speaks about what your problem is. But Pasha Pshat, the Mishnah means you're not. It says you're Yotze with the Mai, which is only the Rabbanan. They weren't Makbet.
Right.
But you're not Yotze with Tevel.
That's why you get into mitzvah b'avera, but that's why the language of the Yotze becomes significant.
Yeah. Okay. So he says the Mishnah doesn't say the reason, and the Mishnah it's dochik to learn that the Rishonim say it's dochik to learn the Mishnah is going like Rav Shimon, because the Stam Mishnah is to learn not like Rav Shimon is like Rav Shimon, which is hard. We don't pass like Rav Shimon. So he says the Rishonim say it in the mitzvah b'avera. He says I am around the Mishnah. I looked at the Ran Taka says that. He doesn't say why he says that, but. Other Rishonim say also because the mitzvah b'avera. Mikom makom, he said Tosa Sukkah Daf Tesa Wanav the Yermaska Hu. He said that's where Tosa is one of the places where Tosa says mitzvah b'avera ain't a rak rabbanan, right? So according to Tosa that says mitzvah b'avera is only the rabbanan. Mukrach lomar, you have to say, right? The Tanem Nishasenu Sovrik Rabbi Shimon Afshul Shlo Kehilkosa. I don't know why you're mukrach, because he seems to understand that the Mishnah means midrash. You're not Yotzei. And I don't know where he saw in the Mishnah that it means midrash. So maybe Tosas will learn the Mishnah means because of mitzvah b'avera, and like Rishonim speak out of Harish. That's mitzvah b'avera. It's only the rabbanan, and according to Rav Shimon's reason, it's the raisa. But he's saying that for him, for some reason, according to the Minchas Chinuch, he understood the Mishnah meant midrash. You're not Yotzei. So he's saying according to Tosas, you can't say because of mitzvah b'avera because that's only the rabbanan, right? And you have to say the Mishnah is going like Rav Shimon, which is lo keilkoso. And he says, Rashi, the Mishnah, Kohanim Pirish Kain Machmas Losov Chametz. He says, you look at Rashi in the Mishnah, he says the reason you're not Yotzei is because of Rav Shimon's reason, because Chametz is in Chal, and you can only be Yotzei Matzah with something which is Chametz. And he says, that's far, that Rashi doesn't say like Rav Shimon. Rashi just says it, that you're not Yotzei, because you have to have something which could have an Isser Chametz. So why can't it have this Isser Chametz? Unless you hold like Reb Shimon, that because Chametz isn't Chal on it. So then it's coming out that Rashi's learning the Mishnah according to Reb Shimon. Who I'll leave it to Reb Shimon? He said Rashi's Svara is only according to Reb Shimon, which it says in the Gemara. So now he's saying like this, Vim Kain. Reb Yosef Mukim the Bedinza Gamkin Sover Tana Didan Matzah Mitzvah Shkal Shiva. So he says now he's saying, he's going back to this shot before. He said Reb Yosef said the reason you can't use Chalas Toda is because it's not Roy L'Chol Shiva. And his problem was, since when is matzah after Roy L'Chol Shiva? So his teretz that he said before was because Reb Yossi learned like Reb Shimon that you need Roy L'Chol Shiva, because like Pnei Yeshua says according to Reb Shimon there's a mitzvah matzah called Shiva. So he was bothering. So why would Reb Yossi learn the Mishnah like Reb Shimon? So it's now right. So I thought before he meant because Reb Yossi held like Reb Shimon. Right? But now he's saying more. According to the Tosfos, he's saying the Mishnah that says you're not Yotzi Matzah Shel Tevel is Reb Shimon. And even though that's Shelo Kehilchosah, but the mitzvah is Reb Shimon because he understood the mitzvah means Matzah Shel Tevel, you're not Yotzi Midaraisa. And like Rashi explains, the reason is because it can't be Chafa. So the Mishnah is going in Reb Shimon's sheet. There's two different Reb Shimons. But he's saying it's not Dochlik now why Reb Yossi would be willing to learn the Mishnah means because it's not Roy L'Chol Shiva like Reb Shimon, because Reb Yossi saw that the Mishnah was going to leave with the Reb Shimon. Reb Yossi Mukim Adin Zagamping Sover Tani done the mitzvah called Shiva. Right? The Aftal Kork, he said we're forced to say Missis and the low Reb Shimon. Lamaisa, he said we don't learn the Mishnah like Reb Shimon. Why? The Maskana. Because now there's a third reason we can't learn the Mishnah like Reb Shimon. Why? Because the Gemara says the Chalos told the Rakike Nazar Nacholi Beno V'Givan. The Gemara asked the question that we had this that besides the problem of Chalos told it's not Roy L'Chol Shiva, the Gemara said there was a problem, it's not Roy L'Chol Moshe Osechem. And you have to have Roy L'Chol Moshe Osechem. So the Gemara said it's going in by Nov, that when they were brought Todas and Nov, they were able to eat the Chalos Toda any place in the world. It was going by Nov. So the Gemara said that can't be according to Reb Shimon, because Reb Shimon holds there was no such thing as Chalos Toda and Nov. He held he only had Korban Tziburs and stuff. So when the Mishnah was talking about in Nov, and then the Chalos Toda Roy for any place in Eretz Yisrael was Roy B'chol Moshe Osechem, that rule, and that's the same Mishnah of Chalos Toda, can't be going like Reb Shimon, because Nov doesn't help it. It's not Roy L'Chol Moshe Osechem. Ayin Rashi Daf Lamed Ches and Beis Yamaskos also points it out. So therefore he's saying, Mikol Makom Tan Didan Bedin Zeh Sfer like Reb Shimon. But as far as the din of Roy L'Chol Shiva, Reb Yossi understood, he did go like Reb Shimon, the Matzah Mitzvah Kol Shiva, right? Him kain shayach shaper sforazu de matzah roy l'shiva. Aval done, but he says that's because that's what he's speaking about. That he wanted to say that the whole sfara of matzah roy l'chol shiva is only according to Reb Shimon. Aval done, but he says according to us, Tavi Rishis, that we don't hold like Reb Shimon that there's a mitzvah matzah kol shiva. Lo shav then that there's no sfara of matzah roy l'chol shiva. Al kain lo heviyah din zek klal. So what he gained by this whole point is, in the beginning, is he gained that it's not so dochlik to say that Reb Yosef learned the Mishnah was like Reb Shimon, like in the Prat of Matzah Roy L'Chol Shiva. Because in the Prat of Matzah Shel Tevel, also it seems to be the Mishnah, you could learn like Rashi learns the Mishnah like Reb Shimon. The reason you're not Yotzi Matzah Shel Tevel is because it's not, Chametz can't be Chalam, which is like Reb Shimon. When Unechonim Divrei HaShagasarye, the essay docholosa, so therefore he's saying the Shagasari that says by Matzah Shel Chodesh will say essay docholosa. Either it's a problem when once the essay is done, it's not Roy L'Chol Shiva anymore. He says there's no problem. The Shagasari is right. There's no problem of Roy L'Chol Shiva because we don't hold you need Roy L'Chol Shiva. That's only Reb Shimon passes that way.
It's 929.
Okay, Linyan Sukkah Shekasab the Shama Dynamics being Roy L'Shiva Yeshnaf Kamina Gam Yeshnaf Kamina Yinichol Shiva Gam Kendall Huva Rishona. It's also not brought over there mitzvah the din of Sukkah Roy L'Chol Shiva. If we were mitzvah the Sukkah when I get to Sukkah I'll talk about Sukkah Roy L'Chol Shiva.